is Monday. Yud Beis Iyar Tavshin Gimel. We are in Sefer HaMamorim Teres Menachem. On page Kuf Yud, we're starting a brand new Maimer. The Maimer of Yud Beis Tammuz Tavshin Yud Aleph. Nosato Lireiecho Nes Lisneises. Nosato Lireiecho Nes Lisneises. Page Kuf Yud, 110. Nosato Lireiecho Nes Lisneises Mipnei Keish Tzelo. This is a pasuk from Tehillim, chapter 60, Kapitel Samach, where it says that you, Hashem, have given Lireiecho, to those who fear you, Nes Lihisnoises. We'll soon see what that means. Mipnei Keish Tzelo. Umei v'kvei kedush zmeir v'chamei admur b'hamaymer shesholach limdi nasrusi v'nitfas ze'ato. And the previous Rebbe brings in his Maimer that he sent to Russia, which was just printed, which means as follows. Yud Beis Tammuz, of course, is the day the previous Rebbe. Yud Beis Yud Gimel Tammuz are the days that the previous Rebbe was released from Soviet prison. And in Tofresh Tzadik Gimel, that's 1933, the previous Rebbe was outside of Russia already. So he sent a Maimer to Russia to be learned on the days of Yud Beis Yud Gimel Tammuz. That Maimer was printed the year the Rebbe said this Maimer, the one we're learning now, which was Tavshin Yud Aleph 1951. So in the year 1951, they printed, Rebbe had printed this Maimer that the previous Rebbe said, the Maimer the previous Rebbe said in Tofresh Tzadik Gimel. They used to print the previous Rebbe's Mamorim. When he came to America, it was difficult for him to speak, so he would give out Mamorim that he had said previously with some changes, alterations. Sometimes they had alterations like the beginning, the end, and so on and so forth. For example, the famous Maimer Basi Legani from Tavshin Yud, right, was actually a Maimer that the previous Rebbe had said previously, but there were some changes and alterations in the beginning and the end of the Maimer. The Maimer was, for instance, Basi Legani was brought to the previous Rebbe on the Friday before he passed away. He passed away on Shabbos. And in fact, Basi Legani is a continuation of 4 Mamorim. One is for Yud Shvat, one is for Yud Gimel Shvat, Purim and Beis Nisan. For a hemshech of 4, continuation of 4 parts. Why? Because it was prepared already in advance. Similarly, there are Mamorim all the way through Tavshin Yud Aleph, right? Even though the previous Rebbe had already passed on to Tavshin Yud, but the Mamorim were I guess, intended or prepared, and they continued to be published until Tavshin Yud Aleph. So this Maimer, the previous Rebbe had written and sent to Anash in Russia, to his Chassidim in Russia, in 1933, for the occasion of Yud Beis Yud Gimel Tammuz, his release from Soviet prison. It was published in 1951. Klar? So the Rebbe says, the previous Rebbe, in his Maimer that he sent to Russia, when? In 1933, and which was just published, when? In 1951. The previous Rebbe, this Maimer brings Pirush HaTargum, the explanation of the Targum, on this pasuk. What does the Targum say on this pasuk? Yohavta lidcheloch nisa lisnaso abei. You have given to those who fear you, nisa lisnaso abei, a test with which to be with which to be tested, either a test with which to be tested or a standard. Nes could mean a number of things. It could be a test, from the expression of nisayon. It could mean a standard on which you raise a flag, for example. Over here, the Targum teaches, I guess nisa means also test. You've given those who fear you a test through which to be tested. What does that mean? The simple meaning of the simple definition of the Targum is that you give those who fear you, Bnei Yisrael, a test with which to be tested. Mipnei Kaishet Sela. So over there he says because of the truth of Avraham forever. But the meaning of the pasuk basically is that Hashem gives Yidden tests in order to justify the reward that Yidden will get when the time will come. What's the deeper meaning of the pasuk? The previous Rebbe explains that this pasuk refers to serving Hashem with Mesiras Nefesh, self-sacrifice, specifically in matters of tests. The Rebbe will explain in a minute that there are different types of serving Hashem, different ways and methods and means through which to serve Hashem. Here we are talking about serving Hashem with self-sacrifice in matters of tests, specifically of tests. Sheniten as the Bnei Yisrael, what is the point of giving the Jewish people tests? In order to affect within them this idea of lifting. Li'isnaso could also be from the expression of lifting. In other words, Hashem gives Bnei Yisrael tests. For what purpose? To lift them to a higher level. It is in this that our last exile is different than the previous exiles. In our exile, we have an abundance of concealments and covers far greater and an abundance of tests than far greater than what took place in previous exiles. And in truth, this itself, the fact that Hashem has given us far more tests in our exile, over and above the tests that took place in previous exiles, this itself is a lesson. This itself shows that the strength and the power has been given to us from above to each and every Jew, that we should be able to withstand these tests. This is the added strength and power that has been given to us in the last exile, over and above the Golos, for example, the exile of Egypt, which was the root of all exiles. Concerning the exile of Egypt, the pasuk says that when Moshe came to speak to the Jewish people, they did not hear him from shortness of breath and from hard work. Hainu. What does that mean? It means that this work that was signified in the tests that they were given, the were given, only confused them, only interfered, and they did not rise up as a result of it. Not so in our exile. In our exile, is the strength and the power has been given. Is to recognize the truth that these events are merely tests. So unlike in the exile of Egypt, where Yidden did not have the strength to deal with difficulties, deal with tests, these difficulties only confuse the Yidden. In our exile, Hashem has given us this because He didn't have the strength. In our exile, Hashem has given us the ability, has given us the tools, the means, the strength with which to deal with the tests that are given to us. Which means that we now have an added quality, an added strength that has been given to us over and above what has been given to Bnei Yisrael in previous exiles, particularly highlighting the exile of Egypt. This is all a synopsis of what the previous Rebbe says in his Maimer. The previous Rebbe continues to explain what is the idea of a test? What is an nisoyon? What is a test? A test is a phenomenon, if you look at the inner dynamics of it, where the godly spark is very greatly concealed and covered up in the episode, in the event, in the circumstances. Dihine. The idea of a test is unlike any other physical matter or physical phenomenon which is refined through Avodas Hashem, through serving Hashem. There is a means of refining and lifting physical phenomena, physical matter through serving Hashem, and the Nisayin, a test, is also designed some type of birur. There's also some type of refinement that takes place when one withstands a test. But they are fundamentally different. Because when we talk about, in the normal course of things, when we engage with Gashmias, when we talk about Gashmias, also we're talking about a phenomenon which conceals godliness, and the idea is to reveal the godliness within it. So how is it different than a test? He says like this. When we talk about, in the normal course of Birur Gashmias, to Birur HaGashmi, to refine and to lift physicality, physical matter, over there, Shabirur Aladei is Askus Behem. In that case, in the normal course of things, the refinement takes place through working with that which we're trying to lift. Through this process of working with it, we refine the spark, and it is lifted and included into godliness. Not some when we talk about a test. When we talk about a test, the refinement takes place not through occupying ourselves with the phenomena, with the actual phenomenon. Rather, it is the person working with himself, how the person responds to those circumstances. Because the test itself is really not something that exists on its own. It doesn't have true existence. The test is not a phenomenon on its own. It is a phenomenon that has been put in front of the individual in order to conceal and to hinder. That's the entire purpose of the test. That is the entire existence of the test. To conceal and to hinder the individual. And what's the idea? For the person to find the resources to deal with that, to overcome that. Therefore, how does a person deal with the test? The entire occupation of the individual, preoccupation of the individual, and that's in those circumstances with himself. To awaken the essential power that the person has embedded within himself, etc. Ad, to the extent that he reaches the level, all the hindrances and the blockages are nullified, are cast aside. Until here, end quote of the previous Rebbe's words, in the beginning of his Maimer, at least very briefly. This is a very short synopsis of what the previous Rebbe says in the beginning of his Maimer. What's the point that the previous Rebbe makes? Says the Rebbe, specifically in our last exile, the double and the quadruple darkness that we experience in the time of the that is known as the heels of Mashiach, meaning to say the very last period before Mashiach comes, which is the end of the concealment and the covering of godliness. Specifically then, nitnu the Bnei Yisrael keiches, special strength and ability was given to the Bnei Yisrael, not to be bothered by tests. How is it possible? It is possible through the fact that we awaken the essential strength that has been given to us to deal with these tests. What is this essential strength? It has two opposing factors, it would seem. On the one hand, it's essential power, essential strength, and on the other hand, it's essential bittul, essential nullification. And one can say that this is the reason why, specifically, serving Hashem through tests affects a much greater lifting and elevation than the normal Avodas Hashem, normal serving Hashem. So you have these two opposing components. How do we get this essential strength, this unbelievable power, essential power to deal with the tests? Because we discover essential bittul, essential nullification, meaning to say, we link in to this inyan atzmi, this essential idea, which is basically Hashem, right? So we sort of put away our identity on the side and we say, we are bottled to Hashem, we nullify ourselves to Hashem, which gives us an infusion of unbelievable strength. Teikif atzmi, essential strength to deal with the tests. And because of that, the serving Hashem through nisyonos, through tests, lifts the person to even a greater level than the normal Avodas Hashem. And therefore automatically the test falls away, the test is nullified, and it becomes as if it doesn't exist. Okay, we'll stop here. We'll continue with Hashem tomorrow.